Welcome to the Jazz Notes podcast. I'm Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
We are recording this on October 6th. It is the last time we are recording before preseason basketball begins. And actually, for a lot of teams, it's already begun. I don't think I realized how late the Jazz were starting, how many teams, over the weekend started playing. Like, there were the Abu Dhabi games, but like Phoenix and LA played a game here, not locally, but in the United States. And there's a lot of preseason games taking place before the Jazz end up taking on Houston later this week.
Yes, and I also think there were some media days the week before the Jazz did theirs, on that Friday. But this week, I was about to say, for the first time, we have a week preview for the Jazz. It's been a long summer for NBA fans. We're finally back for the Jazz in Houston on Wednesday, in San Antonio on Friday, a Texas road trip.
Yep, and that'll give, the Delta Center a little bit more time to get finished. I know that they played the preseason game already for the Utah Mammoth, but just giving them a little bit more time to put whatever finishing touches they need to have on. But it's close. It's very close, and Jazz fans will get a chance to see their team for the most part. There has been a lot of injuries so far. I'm sure it's all precautionary, but Lauri Markkanen was dealing with a wrist injury from Eurobasket, and Kyle Filipowski's been dealing with a little bit of a back injury that apparently he had over the summer. Again, we saw all those guys at Media Day. It didn't look like anybody was in a sling or a wheelchair or something, that's going to prevent them from being able to play, I think, when the season starts. But we'll see at what point they start fully participating in practice and those types of things. But I think the Jazz are being precautionary. And look, they've got a lot of young guys, a lot of guys who can go out there and audition and play. And I think it is a reminder that this is not a team that's necessarily gearing up to win 55 games this year.
Yes.
I don't think that means they're going to rest these players early on to tank games. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to rush anybody to get onto the floor just to play at all costs if they're slightly banged up.
Yes.
It's just, you're going to lose games regardless. Don't further hurt Lauri Markkanen or Isaiah Collier or Kyle Filipowski if you don't have to.
We are in kind of a weird spot right now because we've gotten all of our media day thoughts out, but we also don't have preseason basketball to talk about just yet. So in the first half, what we're going to do is one of our preseason, it's a new one this year before we've done the predicting Jazz Awards, MVP, Sixth Man of the Year.
I will do that.
Which we will do probably after preseason before the regular season. But today we have a new one, which is what is one thing we want to see from each Jazz player this season. Mm-hmm. For that, I'm not saying we can't do this. I tried to stay away from statistical, Walker should average 16. Sure. I try to stay away from that a bit.
Sure.
And also realistic, because you could say Lauri averaged 33 and take the Jazz to the playoffs. So that is what we're going to do for the first half, and then of course we will get into your mailbag questions in the second half. Who do you want to start with?
Do you want to just go at the very top? Do you want to start with Lauri?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
For Lauri, I said step up as a leader, which is something we sort of talked about in Media Day, where Lauri isn't the most vocal person, but now coming into this year, still a young, if not younger, definitely younger, Jazz team. And you don't have Colin Sexton, who's a very vocal, energetic guy. You don't have John Collins. And yes, you do have Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, some of these other vets stepping in, but you're a familiar face in the locker room for guys like Keontae, Bryce, and even rookies coming in, Ace, Walter Clayton, they, in some way, symbolized Lauri with the Jazz.
Of course.
So
you look at the highest paid guy in the locker room.
Exactly.
And you pay attention to that guy because they all want to be the highest paid guy in the locker room. So that's who they're going to look at. And Lauri has a huge name and had a huge summer and went and played at Eurobasket and had the best Eurobasket performance in Finland's history. So Lauri, I think that's where I would go to. If it's not Lauri return to all-star form coming off of Eurobasket, there's a famous story of Will Hardy stopping practice one point and saying, Lauri, this is Team Finland. I know this is the NBA, but the Utah Jazz are Team Finland. The same way you're a star in Finland, you have to be a star here. This has to be your team. Lauri needs to make this his team.
Yes.
He needs to continue to play that way. John Collins is gone. Colin Sexton's gone. Some of the other guys are here. The vets are here. But whereas legitimately John Collins might have been as good as Lauri was last year, and I don't think John's as good of a player as Lauri, but last season specifically he was as good, Lauri needs to be clearly the best player and clearly the leader of the team.
Yes.
He's got to get back to that.
For some of these guys, I put in parentheses something else I wanted to say for them. And for Lauri, I put 2023/Eurobasket production from him.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for Lauri. Let's go to Keontae George.
Okay.
For Keontae, pretty simple. I just said 3 to 5% more efficient.
Yeah, I think that's going to be his biggest growth signal is that the shot starts falling in at 44% of the time from the floor and 38% from three. And if he does that, he's probably a pretty serviceable NBA player. And if he stays where he is, he's Trey Burke.
Yes.
And Trey Burke's out of the NBA after a couple of years, and the Jazz probably trade him this offseason or move on or whatever it looks like. But yeah, that's the truth for Keontae. It's that simple. I think Keontae taking a more serious approach is really what I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And he really did that at Media Day.
Yeah.
He was really impressive in that sense, and we went and talked to him, and you can find our interview with him on YouTube. I wrote it up at KSLSports.com. He said some really interesting things about, I had kind of criticized that last year at Locker Room Cleanout, Bryce Sensabaugh had said, I want to be known as the best shooter in the NBA, or I want people to recognize that I'm like one of the top shooters, and that's kind of my identity. And Keontae George said, I just want to be respected by people. It's like, you are respected. You're in the NBA. You're getting paid all this money. That's the respect. And then I thought he had a different tune at Media Day, which I thought was a real positive sign from Keontae. So I want to continue to see that. I want to see bought in, recognizing what's at stake, recognizing that his future could be a $60 million contract. His future could be a minimum contract, and that could be decided with what happens this year, and could be decided with what happens before the trade deadline. I feel like he could look, I know very different players, he could look at Walker Kessler and be like, okay, Walker, I'm in a similar position to Walker. Sure, I'm not going to be entering restricted free agency after this year, but if I don't make the Jazz pay me, if you want to phrase it like that, then I could be a minimum player if I don't perform. And Keontae could very easily be a minimum player.
Yeah.
Which I know is crazy, but you look around the NBA and there are a lot of really good players or talented players who showed promise who are not getting paid.
Cam Thomas
is a good version of it. Gary Trent Jr. is a good version of it. Good players who aren't making any money right now.
Yeah.
Who are just trying to hang on and find the last roster spot in the NBA. It doesn't matter if you were picked top 10. Doesn't matter if you were picked top 30. Doesn't matter if you went undrafted. It's hard to make the NBA right now because the league hasn't expanded in a long time. There's not a lot of jobs, especially jobs for inefficient shooters.
Yeah.
And that's where Keontae's got to get better.
Maybe not the best example for him, but Keontae has all of the freedom and all of the tools to choose his path between being like Cam Thomas or Jamal Murray. That's how I look at it for him. And a lot of it, like you said, does rely on this year. Next one, let's get an easy one out of the way. I feel like we're both going to agree on this one.
Okay.
Taylor Hendricks, just get comfortable, stay healthy.
Throw your body around.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I want to see Taylor flying around the floor, recognizing that slipping on a wet spot in Dallas is fluky.
Yep.
It's not injury-prone guy. You just had a weird situation. So, can you pick up where you left off? And that's fine. He doesn't need to get better. He hasn't played. He's been rehabbing a knee or a broken leg and dislocated ankle and all the issues that he had. He doesn't need to be better than the last time we saw him, but can he pick up close to where he left off, which I thought was really promising, how he was playing and flying around and physically dominant. Can he get back to that player?
Let's do both the rookies. Let's start with Walt Clayton. For Walt, I said show flashes in non-shooting areas. I feel like we know that he's going to come in and be even a decent shooter for a rookie. And then what I want to see from him is, can you run the offense? Can you make good passes? And then on top of that, even though you're 6'2", you're a smaller guard, can you at least leave an impact on that end?
I have faith that he's going to be able to be an effective offensive player because we've seen it in college. I want to see if some of those steals numbers we saw in Summer League and what he was able to do last year at Florida are for real, because I think his pathway to becoming the starting point guard for the Jazz is to be the best defender of those guards.
Yeah.
Because as we've talked about, and we were just talking about with Keontae and needing to improve his shooting, I think Walt is probably a better shooter than Keontae. I know he's a better shooter than Isaiah, so can he separate himself elsewhere? And yes, that's running the offense, but also defensively. The Jazz want to be a good team at any point. They need to have a good defensive point guard. And can Walt enter the NBA with that mindset? He is older than those other guys. So if he can enter with that mindset, I think he can win that job.
All right, Ace Bailey. For him, I said impact the game off the ball. We know that he's an amazing scorer. And also at Rutgers, it was a lot of ball in hand stuff. He did have catch and shoots, don't get me wrong. But he's always been asked to be a ball in hand, do everything for our offense kind of guy. Mm-hmm. He's not going to be that necessarily in the NBA. And even Will Hardy at Media Day was like he's not going to be the best player in the NBA on day one. Like we're gonna bring him along slowly. And I think the best way to do that is let the offense come to you and then really focus on those off the ball areas, which is catch and shooting, but also we saw this in Summer League, going down there, getting dirty with some rebounds, and then also just using his length and such on defense.
Will Hardy said, make quick decisions, which I think is really important. And I think you actually saw some of that in Summer League. It was the one game against Memphis. The first game he wasn't particularly good. And the second game he was really good and made quick decisions and made his life really easy and chased the ball and had great hustle plays. And that is something that Will Hardy also said, that he's made maybe the most hustle plays of anybody in camp so far. So that's a real promising sign. Mine will be keep the controller plugged in. which we talked about off the ball last year, sometimes at Rutgers, if he wasn't, he would just watch the ball, whether he was guarding the ball or guarding off the ball, and guys would backdoor him. He just wasn't paying attention. So can he keep the controller plugged in? Can he make sure that he's following his guy around? Can he make sure that his length is an asset on defense? Because just being on the floor, even if he's the Jazz's fourth best defender or fifth best defender, with his plus size that he has, it's kind of like Lowry. Lowry's not a particularly great defensive player. He is 7 feet tall, and he's very athletic. So you just kind of, when you're surveying the floor as an opposing defense, you just see a big guy there, and it makes it hard to do certain things.
Yep.
Can Ace at least start there with that foundation and then build off of that? So keep the controller plugged in. Make sure the focus is there. That's what's going to be for Ace. Because I think if the focus is there, as Will Hardy said, he's going to be better than the Jazz even want. If he can, if the attention is there, he really is as talented as advertised, and probably more than what you even saw at Rutgers.
Yeah. Next up, I want to talk about Isaiah Collier, because this is an interesting one, at least for me. I wrote star in your role, and what I mean by that is, last week I said Walter Clayton his addition is probably impacts Isaiah Collier the most, because I think as Walt Clayton proves himself with the Jazz, I think the first minutes that he may dip into is Isaiah Collier's. And for Isaiah Collier, I see him this year for the Jazz maybe as a second quarter, third quarter player. Like, he's not going to start, maybe not first off the bench, and then he's probably not going to close games for the Jazz. So when he's in those second and third quarters, star in your role. Do what you do best. Because you've talked about how sometimes second-year players will go in and try to prove that they can do the things they couldn't do in year one, and then it ends up biting them. For Isaiah, do the things that you're good at and star in your role. I put in parentheses like Keontae's six-man last year. Like, he could have put his shoulders down and checked out, but he didn't. He got better, honestly. And I would love for Isaiah to do the same thing.
Yeah, Isaiah's interesting. There's only room for 2 point guards, and the Jazz are specifically point guard heavy. Keontae maybe at the 2 eventually might have some value, but with his size, which is not elite, it's okay. It's pretty good for a point guard. It's very average or below average for a shooting guard. Keontae, like, the most realized best version of Keontae is probably a point guard.
Yeah.
It's not really what he's shown particularly. I think Walt Clayton's actually a little bit bigger than both Isaiah and Keontae, but still probably isn't big enough to be a true 2 guard in the NBA. So his best role is probably a point guard, and we know Isaiah is only a point guard.
Yes.
So those guys are all there's 3 guys competing for 2 spots, really, I think. And if I had to bet on who would be the one who kind of falls out of that group, it would be Isaiah, just based on the fact that the league values shooting so much and Isaiah doesn't have it. So along those lines, I want to see improvement in shooting, and I'm just going to start really with a low bar, which is your free throws.
Yeah.
Can you make your free throws? Because he only shot 68% from the free throw line last season. I think it was below 50% at Summer League. Like, it was weirdly bad.
Yeah.
Because he does not have that touch, and you've got to start showing that you can have the touch at least somewhat. And the best way for guards like Isaiah to stick in the NBA is to be great playmakers, which he was. 6 assists last year, 3 turnovers, which is high, but it's still 2 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. And then you can score by drawing a lot of fouls and then being very consistent making your free throws. And that's where Isaiah's got to start. So I'm going to look at his free throws. Can he get there? And then can he make them? He only took 2 a game last year, and he only shot 68%. So get there more, make them more.
Speaking of that, next let's talk about Walker Kessler.
Yeah.
For my overarching thing for him, I said make the Jazz pay you, which is something we talked about last week. If Walker goes out and averages 17 and 13, which is totally realistic for him, then the Jazz will be forced to pay him / match any offer that he gets, which they might do regardless because Walker is a big part of this team. But still, that's what I wrote for him. Like I said, for some of these guys, I put parentheses. In Walker's parentheses, I wrote 65 to 70% from the line.
His ability to shoot over 70% from the free throw line would probably be the thing that makes him the most effective quickly if all else remains the same.
Yes.
If you're assuming he comes back as the same player as last year, but then starts making free throws at a much higher rate, his efficiency, his quality as a player really skyrockets because then you can't foul him. And, it doesn't matter now. The Jazz aren't in any close games, so no one's hacking Walker for the most part. You saw it a little bit.
Yeah.
But, Rudy eliminated the ability to do that really early in his career. Teams tried to do it, punished him. He came back in a summer and then all of a sudden was, 68 or higher the rest of his career. And it got really hard. And it seemed like the later in games, the better free throw shooter Rudy got. So I think that is a big part of it. I'm going to start just at a lower level for Walker, though, which is essentially don't revert to year 2 because things didn't go your way.
Yeah.
You didn't get paid this offseason. You mentioned you were frustrated about it. You said you didn't want to talk about it anymore. the best way to not talk about it anymore is to come back as a better player than you were last year and say, yeah, I'm not worried about not getting paid. I'm going to get paid. I'm going to make them pay me, like you said. And I'm going to do that by doing what made me effective in year 3 that I did not do well in year 2, which is playing hard.
Yes.
He did not play hard enough in year 2. If he plays hard in year 3, he becomes a much better defensive player. He's a great rebounder. We know he's the most efficient scorer in the NBA when he's locked in and not shooting threes. And I don't think the Jazz are going to be asking him to shoot threes early. So that's what I want to see. Locked in, play hard Walker Kessler, because if he does that, he will make $120 million or more next season.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Let's knock out some of these older veteran guys, and then we can return to the last younger people in the young core we didn't visit. First, for Svi, I said get back near 40%. He was from 3. He was 34.5 last season. 2 years before that, 38.9, 42.4.
Pass the ball.
Yeah.
Svi doesn't pass.
Yeah.
Svi likes to get a lot of shots up really quickly. We're not going to see Svi. So it's kind of hard to matter. But get on the floor and show you can actually make some plays for some other people instead of just shooting to try and keep yourself in the NBA.
For Nurkic, I said don't let the defense fall apart when Walker's on the bench.
I would like to see Nurkic instill some toughness into the Jazz that he has, that very few players in the NBA have, and where he can be an asset. There's a reason he keeps getting punched in the face by other people. He's tough. He's not fun to play against. He frustrates other people, and so they punch him, which is not the correct response, but he's been punched in the face by more than one person, right? Yeah. People do not like Jusuf Nurkic. Can he instill that in Walker? Can he instill that in Taylor Hendricks, who are nice guys, who are happy to be there guys? And that doesn't mean they're bad players, but happy to be there only takes you so far.
True.
You also need to be a little bit of a, I belong here, this is my space, and you're infringing on that. And Nurk has made over $100 million in his career by playing that way. So I think that could be really beneficial. You know, Kelly Olynyk had it a little bit, but Kelly's quite soft.
Yes.
Nurkic is not soft. He is a mountain of a human being who could teach that to the Jazz players.
And I like that a lot, and I like the specifically teaching the Jazz players, because that you're acknowledging that Nurkic is probably not going to be here whenever the Jazz are competing, but a lot of these young players might be. And if you look at every champion probably in history, you have one of those guys.
You have a guy.
Like Lou Dort, Draymond Green, et cetera, et cetera.
Dennis Rodman, it just goes back forever.
Okay, now for George Niang, I said shoot 40% from 3. It would make it 7 of the last 8 years he's done that.
Yeah. George is a specialist.
Yeah.
He's exactly what he is. He's a specialist. He's going to keep his career alive because somebody will be able to sell themselves on George. This is the last year of his contract. He will get paid and stick in the NBA next year, and he doesn't want to be on a minimum contract, and I don't think he will be next season. So he's just got to stay bought in, and he will. George is a good teammate. He plays the right way. You know, he knows what his strengths are. He doesn't try and do something that he's not capable of. So George might be the player I'm least concerned about. What can he accomplish?
Yeah.
George has carved out a very healthy role in the NBA by knowing exactly what he is. So just keep doing that, and I don't think he's going to lose. He's not going to lose that mindset, I don't think. The difference being that you look at where he's been lately, maybe with the exception of Atlanta, and even Atlanta was competing to make the play-in last year. You know, Philly, Cleveland, the spots he's been in have been competing for the playoffs and have been really good teams. Now he's on a bad team. So how does that change the way he plays?
True.
I guess it would be stay contained, George. That would be the best thing for him.
Last 2 of the vets, Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love. For Kyle Anderson, I said bring calmness/patience into the offense. Works well with his slow-mo moniker. I think the Jazz team, and even I think Ace was the one who said this, the team's fast. They're going to be running up and down the court. And I think having a little bit of, okay, let's still run offense every now and then will be good for the Jazz.
Yeah, I think stabilizing things, executing a half-court offense, Kyle can do that. And he will probably come in when the Jazz have point guard play that is substandard.
Yep.
And, he might play the 3, but he can step in and play that role where he's basically a point guard or a point forward and really slow everything down, and he can run everything. So, yeah, I don't expect to see a ton of Kyle Anderson playing this year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's in the opening night rotation because he's been an NBA rotation player for a long time. But I think, bring a sense of stability that the Jazz aren't going to have otherwise because they don't have a good dribbler. Yeah. In all honesty, a good distributor other than Isaiah Collier. And even Isaiah is still trying to figure everything out, and Kyle knows everything.
Yes. Kevin Love. Don't get me wrong. I say this with best intentions for both the Jazz and Kevin Love. For Kevin Love, I said raise your trade value.
Yeah, become tradable.
Yeah, exactly. He is maybe in the last year of his career, if not definitely on his very last leg. He's 37 years old. And I told this to you before we started recording yesterday. Seeing Kevin Love up there was awesome because when I first started watching the NBA, he was like a top 10 player in the league. And I would love to see him end his career in the playoffs or on a playoff team.
I'm with you. Got to talk to him last week during practice. He's exceptional. He's really as good as advertised. And, they talked about, Patty Mills coming in or Drew Eubanks. Yep. There are those guys. There's difference when it's Kevin Love, $200 million, whatever he's made in his career, has a championship.
Yep.
Is already punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Like, that's different, and guys will listen to him. And he was phenomenal. I mean, I thought the way he talked, recognizing things he did wrong, things he did right, how his career has gone, what he wishes he had done differently, his ability to talk about that, and I think actually go over and, Patty Mills putting his arm around Ace Bailey wouldn't have probably meant a whole lot to Ace, in all honesty. Like, Patty Mills was last relevant when Ace was 11 years old.
Yeah.
At best. Mm-hmm. Kevin Love has been on good Heat teams that were in the finals 3 years ago or whatever it was. Like, even the youngest players know Kevin Love very well and like know good version of Kevin Love, or grew up watching LeBron and knew Kevin Love was right next there with LeBron.
Yeah.
So, playing Patty Mills saying, well, I played with Tim Duncan doesn't mean a whole lot actually to a lot of these young guys. So I think actually having Kevin Love out there to mentor is going to be great. And then, if he can become tradable, that's probably the best overall outcome for the Jazz if they could turn him into a second-round pick or two.
The last two young guys, Kyle Filipowski and Bryce Sensabaugh. Let's start with Flip. I said show noticeable improvement on interior defense. I would say that would be a big thing for him. They talked about his shot being much better. He already last year was like a mini hub on offense for the Jazz. And like we all know, Summer League MVP kind of went under the radar. Mm-hmm. I think that is where he can improve the most, or where I'd like to see the most improvement from him.
He was really aggressive in Summer League. He had a lot of dunks.
Yep.
He had some dunks off the dribble. He caught some alley-oops. That type of stuff would be really good. Honestly, the best thing for his career is if he becomes a 40% three-point shooter.
Yeah.
He's never going to be, like, he's a good athlete. He's not even a Lowry Markkanen level athlete, though, and I don't mean not even, like, Lowry's a great athlete. Yeah. So he's just not an elite athlete. He's probably the fourth best athlete in the Jazz's front court. Lowry's better than he is. Ace is better than he is. Taylor's better than he is. So he's never going to be elite.
Yeah.
So he's got to become elite somewhere offensively, and the three-point shooting will open up the rest of his game. And if you have to really close out on him, his ball handling is good enough that he gets to the rim, and then he should be able to finish. And he looks much bigger. He looks stronger. He looks like he's put on some weight, so that's a good plus for him this offseason. But figure out one thing you do defensively. Yeah. Whether that's playmaker, and I get a lot of steals, which is what he did at Duke. Can he do that? And just he's a steal and a half a game. It's weird, but you'll take that because he gets the ball and then he can throw an outlet pass or he can dribble up the court, like those types of things. Or become a really good rebounder. That's a skill. I know that's, you can be a bad defensive player, but if you end possessions because you get rebounds that don't just fall into your lap, that's a real plus. So those types of things, figure out whatever it is you do defensively and kind of focus on it, whether it's steals, whether it's rebounds, whether it's being a little bit switchable. And then, hit threes at a high rate. Keep hitting threes at 35% or better, and he'll have a really long career.
The reason I specifically pointed out, I agree that any improvement anywhere on defense would be great for Flip. The reason I point out interior defense is because of his size. I think he's going to be there a lot, even if he's playing the four for the Jazz. And I think that being switchable as a four is not I don't want to say niche, but it's a side skill, if you will. But you're always going to be down to the basket. So I think you need to be stronger and need to improve in that area. That's why I mentioned that.
Yep.
Last, Bryce Sensabaugh, for him, I said walk the walk on defense.
Okay.
At Media Day, he pointed that out as his thing that he had been working on, and that's what his focus is for this year. Last year, the Jazz were maybe the worst defensive team in the NBA, and he might have been one of the worst defensive players on the Jazz roster.
It gets interesting for the Jazz because ideally now with Ace, if Ace can figure it out defensively, and with Taylor back, you should become pretty switchable.
True.
There might be more opportunity for that to be the case. Now, Walker's a drop big, Nurk's a drop big as well, so you're still going to have to play some drop, which limits your ability to be switchable. But if your fours and your threes can switch, it would be nice if Bryce Sensabaugh is your two and he gets switched onto a bigger player. Bryce is 230.
Yeah.
He should be able to keep you from just, backing him down and getting an easy layup or whatever. So the switch with Bryce might not mean that he becomes defensively a great player on the perimeter, but if you do try and put a body on him down low, he can put the body back on you and then really slow you down. So that could be an advantage for him again, which is just he's not a total sieve defensively, and that would be a plus. Mine for Bryce would be never dribble, always shoot.
Okay.
In all
Yeah.
honesty, I think he's
Yeah.
that good of a shooter. I think he has a chance to just be, Davis Bertans caliber shooter. And then I never dribble. Obviously, that's hyperbole. But he talked about it. We talked to him at Media Day, and he said, like, you watch Kevin Durant, he never dribbles more than 4 times. It's like, yeah, Bryce has had some dribbling moments in his career because he got to do it a lot at Ohio State. So can Bryce be, I walk into my shot, maybe one dribble into my shot, sidestep or whatever it is, and then if all else fails, I can create a little bit, but he should be taking 9 threes a game and molding himself a little bit after George Niang and then trying to become a better player than George.
I was going to say, looking at Bryce's stats from year 1 to year 2, the difference is crazy because, first of all, he went from 32 to 71 games played. And a lot of times when you see that, you'll see numbers dip because they're getting more opportunity, taking more shots, etc. But he jumped almost 7% from the field and like 13% from the three-point line, which is ridiculous. In, again, one more parenthesis I had for Bryce, 50, 40, 90. Last year he was 46, 42, 89.
Yep. He's really close.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll get to 50 from the floor.
Yeah, that's the
because
tough
he's
part.
a lot of three-point shooting and mid-range shooting. But yeah, can he figure out how to continue to develop that offensive game? Bryce could average 17 points a game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if he gets there this year, but I mean, in his career, Bryce really has that type of potential. In fact, let me pull up Davis Bertans and see what his highest career average ever was. Because being the best shooter in the NBA is a huge plus. Davis Bertans in 2019-2020 averaged 15 points a game. It's like Bryce could easily get there. And Bertans was shooting 8.7 threes a game and shooting 42%. Like, Bryce can do that. I have no doubt Bryce can do that. And then you carve out 15 points a game. I think you become really valuable, even if you're not an elite defensive player. And
even then, like I think of Davis Bertans as like a Kyle Korver, like actually strictly threes. But I would not mind Bryce getting 5 shots from floaters and dribble pull-ups, mid-range dribble pull-ups a game either.
Get into the paint and make a good pass, too.
Yeah.
He is a little turnover prone at times, so can he fix those issues? So no, Bryce's trajectory is really good. Yes. I think Bryce is going in the right direction. I think his mindset's there, and physically he looks awesome. So I think those are all pluses.
All right, I think that's it.
All right, we got a lot of questions coming in the mailbag. We'll take a break. We'll get to those coming up next. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. All right, we always wrap up the pod with the mailbag. You can find us on Twitter and Blue Sky. I guess it's X now. At C Holt Sports and at Ben's Hoops, and read us at KSLSports.com. I put out the prompt every day at about 11, or today I did it at 11:45 because I was forgetting what I was doing. And then we will answer your questions. Where are we starting?
So first up, and I'm starting with this one because I also wanted to ask you this last week, but I forgot to.
Okay.
From ex-Utah Jazz fan, NBA is rigged.
Okay.
Is Ace Bailey going to start the season as a starter or off the bench? I'm going to add to this. I was going to ask you last week if Media Day changed your thoughts on what we gave as our projected starting lineup.
No, it didn't. And again, my projection has been Keontae. I'm more solidified that Keontae is the starting point guard.
Yes, okay.
And I've not been told that, but I just kind of believe that more. And everyone said, like, his good summer kept up. Then I think it's going to be Ace at the 2. I think it's going to be Lowry at the 3. I think it's going to be Flip at the 4. And I think it's going to be Walker at the 5.
Okay.
That's kind of been my guess for the starting lineup. The clear question is, like, is it Flip at the 4, or does Flip come off the bench? And then you can play Bryce Sensabaugh at the 2, or does a Kyle Anderson or George Niang start, and just, like, to calm things down and make life easier for everybody. Does Cody Williams find a way to start? Like, Cody's been kind of the quietest person. I mean, he's just a quiet person, but you're just not hearing a lot of noise about Cody.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. You just haven't heard a lot about him. But is there a chance he could jump in and start? That's a really young team. I do think Ace starts, though. Yes, I think so. I think he opens the season as a starter. And in fact, I think the Jazz are higher on him than I even expected.
Okay.
Like, I think he is showing more behind the scenes than I had kind of anticipated. I think the stuff that you saw at Summer League, I haven't been told this specifically, but just kind of reading between the lines of what I'm hearing, has continued to show up in practice. Yeah. The hustle plays, as I mentioned, Will Hardy said that he's made more hustle plays than maybe anybody. Just seems like the things that he does well continue to work. And we talked to Will, Jake, Scott, and I did on our show, and I said, are you expecting a different Ace than what you saw at Rutgers? And he said, yeah, basketball is the most contextual sport. The context he was playing in at Rutgers was a little bit crazy. Everything ran through him, and rightfully so. He was the best player on the floor, especially when Dylan Harper wasn't out there. He doesn't have to be that guy anymore.
Yeah.
So he can do so much less and probably maximize more of what he does really well already, or at an NBA level at this point. So he might look even better. So I expect him to be on the floor early, often, and starting.
I'm with you on those thoughts about Keontae being more solidified. A week ago, I probably would have thought that because we agreed on that projected starting lineup, I would have thought, yeah, Keontae's probably the most iffy. I agree with you now as well that it's probably Kyle the most iffy, just because Lowry and Ace honestly have so much positional versatility. Like you can slot them anywhere 2 through 4, both basically. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Bryce, Kyle Anderson, one of these guys. Last year, the Jazz started Taylor Hendricks over John Collins. I'm sure that was something in game 1, I mean. So I don't know if that was something that we saw then, but I feel like it is to play around, but I do agree with you that I think the Jazz love Ace, and I think he starts day 1.
Yep.
All right, next up from Jazz Time Jones. So we went from vets taking minutes last year to different vets this year that are going to want to play. What is the plan?
Kevin Love's not going to want to play. I don't mean he doesn't want to play. He wants to play, but I don't think he is I demand minutes. He understands the situation. I think Kyle will get enough minutes here and there. George is probably the vet that needs to play the most. It's a contract year for George, and he knows what he knows he's got to continue to perform to get his next contract. So that will be there. But I mean, let me pull up George Niang's numbers really quick. What's the most he's ever played in a season? What's the most points or minutes per game he's ever averaged in a season? It's 20. He averaged 23 minutes a game, basically twice. The end of last season in Atlanta for 28 games, and he averaged 22.8 minutes per game in 76 games for the Philadelphia 76ers in 2021, 2022. That was when he was their free agent addition. Yeah. He got signed after leaving the Jazz. So he's hit the most. Let me tell you this. Do you have his numbers pulled up?
I can pull them up.
Don't pull them up.
Okay.
Over under, what do you think's the most games George Niang's ever started in his career?
Started?
In a single season.
It's hard to say because I could see him picking up some with the many stops in his career. I'm going to say 25.
10.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
10's low. To be in the league as long as George has, which is now going into his 10th season, again, as a second-round pick, almost unheard of. Not a whole lot of guys do that ever. He's only ever started 10 games, and he's done it twice in his career. George is not a starter, and George has never been a starter. So he shouldn't start this year. That doesn't mean he's not one of the 3 or 4 or 5 best players on the Jazz roster, but he's just not a career starter. He's just kind of not that guy. So I don't expect him to start. And if he's coming off the bench and he continues to play 22 minutes, then there's plenty of room for everybody to play then. That's pretty easy. One of the young guys is not going to play. I do think people should recognize that. I don't know who it is, but Keontae, Isaiah, Walt Clayton, Cody, Kyle, Filipowski, Ace Bailey, Bryce Sensabaugh, Taylor Hendricks, that's 8 guys or whatever it is. That's a full rotation in the NBA for some teams. The fact that George is playing, the fact that I think Nurkic is going to play, the fact that Kyle Anderson will get some minutes somewhere, I would think, probably means there's a chance Cody Williams is not in the rotation to start the year.
Yeah.
And I think that's realistic. And John Tonji's definitely not going to play. I don't think, minus something crazy happening. You're just not going to. Some of these young guys are not going to play early. They're not going to be in the opening night rotation. They're going to have to go and cut their teeth in the G League again and show that they have to go there. And that's a challenge for Cody. If that's where Cody ends up, how does he handle that? Yeah. Or if Isaiah ends up in the G League this year, after playing 70 plus games last year, I think he was 3rd most minutes or maybe 2nd most minutes on the team. How does he respond to that? That's a big question coming up this season: is which young player does not end up in the rotation?
Question for you from me, not in the mailbag. Do you think, and I know Will Hardy's quote about being a meritocracy would, that's the answer right there, but I'm curious what you think. Do you think the Jazz would prioritize playing Cody Williams over an Isaiah Collier?
I would. And generally, I think the Jazz take those types of approaches because the reason I have made that decision personally of I would is by watching and kind of learning what the Jazz do and saying that I understand why they're doing it. So that's kind of how I've learned basketball and how I would emulate it. But no, I don't actually think the Jazz would necessarily they wouldn't force it.
Yeah.
I don't think if Isaiah's playing better than Cody, the Jazz would just say, well, Cody was a top 10 pick or Cody at his best is more valuable than Isaiah at his best. So let's prioritize Cody. I think there's just a real chance that, like, you've got a couple of guys who can play at that position, whether it's Bryce can play 2-3 just like Cody, or Ace can play 2-3 just like Cody, that Cody just isn't in the rotation.
Okay.
And if I had to guess which of these guys not in the rotation early, it's either Cody or Isaiah Collier.
Yes. Yeah.
And it may be Walt Clayton for like the first 5 games. And honestly, it might just be Walt.
True.
And then Walt moves in because, you want to give him an opportunity and he has a good third quarter somewhere randomly, and then you got to keep him in the rotation.
A la Isaiah Collier last year.
And Kyle Filipowski.
Yeah.
Kyle was not going to play. Taylor Hendricks breaks his leg. And now not only is Flip out there, but Flip's the best young player on the team. So, but I do think Flip is in the rotation.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Flip plays.
Next up, from Jazz Nation. Have you heard anything about the Jazz having a City Edition jersey this season? There was rumor during offseason about a new Southern Utah City Edition jersey for the season.
The Jazz do have an alternate that they have not announced yet and revealed yet. I have not seen it.
Okay.
I tweeted out the photo last week of everyone wearing baby blue or light blue or jazz blue or snow blue or mountain blue or whatever they call it. I can't remember. That's my fault. That's not making fun of them. That's my fault for not remembering what it's called. But it's that blue color that is on the trim for the Jazz jerseys this year. And I just think it's not a coincidence that everyone's wearing light blue shoes when they go to practice, or they've got the light blue sweater on or T-shirt on. Like, that's just clearly a color the Jazz are working into the rotation. I think would be my guess that it would be something like that, but totally a guess. I promise you I haven't seen it.
Next up, Jimbo Slice. If Kevin Love couldn't find a team that wanted him in the offseason, what are the odds a team wants to trade for him during the season? Why not just buy him out?
Buying him out would just cost money.
Yeah.
Now, you might feel like, and the problem is if you buy him out, it still counts against your cap, so it's money on the books still. He had a weird season last year. Remember, he wasn't hurt. His dad died, so he left the team for a long time, and the Heat didn't really need him to play, so he didn't play a whole lot of games, and I think that lessened his value. I think Miami was a disaster last year, and that lessened the value, and teams do clearly Kevin Love's at this like weird turning point of his career. It's like, is he done? Is he washed? Does he still have something to offer? And I don't think anyone's pretending he has 82 games worth of basketball to offer.
Yeah.
But there are teams in February that will say, I bet he has 8 games of something to offer. And that doesn't mean the playoff race. I mean, that might mean the playoffs. That means like emergency. We were counting on name your backup center or backup 4 playing a little bit, and he's hurt. And so we need Kevin Love to come in and play a couple of minutes. Like the Clippers are the example. Mm-hmm. So, and the Jazz made a lot of trades with the Clippers recently. But like, who's their backup? Brook Lopez? Or maybe Brook Lopez starts?
Yeah. And then...
Well, they've got Zubats. So Zubats get a start.
Yeah. And then
so let's say their backups are like John Collins and Brook Lopez. Like, let's say one of those guys gets hurt. And they say, man, we love both those guys' ability to spread the floor, bring a little bit of toughness. They're gone, but we would really, and we can get by with one of them, but we would love to have somebody else for 8 minutes a game in a pinch where Brook Lopez gets foul trouble or Zubats gets foul trouble. We'll give up a second-round pick for Kevin Love, but we don't need him for the full year. And in fact, we don't want to like take up a roster spot for a full year because if everything works out, we don't need Kevin Love.
Yeah.
But then something doesn't work out and Kevin Love jumps up the priority list and you need a leader or you need somebody to come in and serve the locker room. And he's played with so many guys, somebody endorses him. And they go in that direction. Or a team just like, hey, we don't have the ability to spread the floor for 3 minutes a game, and we could really use that. You saw that last year with the Pacers. Like every once in a while, they could spread the floor in the corners with a big guy, and it was like, oh, that was really valuable.
Yeah,
that happens.
Kevin Love might be the most seasoned / smartest forward in the NBA behind LeBron. Like at the end of the day, like he's one of the smartest guys in the NBA. And so to answer this last part of the question, why not buy him out? And you mentioned this in the first half when we talked about him. He brings a lot, like that smartness, that basketball IQ is going to help this young Jazz team in a lot of ways. And also, like you said, he's a more household name than, for example, Patty Mills. So I think that carries at least a little bit of weight in a locker room.
But like the Cavaliers signed Thomas Bryant. Yeah. Like if Thomas Bryant gets hurt and they need a backup and they say, well, we know Kev. Yeah. Let's go get Kev for a second round pick. That's the type of situation where I think he's got some value. And why you hold on to him as opposed to just buying him out.
Yeah. Next from Quinn. With the addition of vets who are connective players, the natural progression of our young guys, and the addition of Ace and Walt and Hardy unleashed, I find it extremely unlikely that the Jazz will be able to lose anywhere near as much as we did last season. Is the pick in danger?
It's not in danger. To find near as much. You win 22 games this year. That's 30% more than you won last year. Like, do you know how hard it is to win 30% more games? I've brought this up a lot, I'm sure, and I'm going to keep going back to it. It's like, I did have to write an article on the last day of the season because it was pertinent because the Wizards won a game at the buzzer to make sure the Jazz had the worst record in the NBA. It was a crazy game too. Like there was a backcourt violation, or I can't remember what it was, that allowed the Wizards to even get the ball to go and hit the game winner. And by the way, that has a chance to be so consequential. Like, I don't know, did you watch the Pelicans at all over the weekend? Like they've been playing, they're playing overseas. It's like Jeremiah Fears, like I think his first game was 3 of 15.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Exactly kind of what we thought he was going to be. His second game was better.
Yeah.
But his first game was very rough. And you just think like, man. So anyways, let me get back and I'll get back. I'll cross both of these off the list. I promise I'm going to pay off when I'm selling. But, I wrote an article on the last day of the season of 6 buzzer beaters that allowed the Jazz to finish with the worst record in the NBA, like including a Trae Young half-court shot in Salt Lake City. But it was like all of these crazy shots had to happen for the Jazz to end up with the worst record. Now, what's crazy is like if Ace ends up being a guy, and the weirdness for Ace to end up in Utah, of all places, when he should have been the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah.
If not in consideration for the 2nd overall pick to the Spurs. Definitely shouldn't have fallen past 4th with Charlotte, even though I did watch Charlotte last night because I wanted to watch Colin Sexton and I wanted to see what Con Knippel looked like, and Con might be the best player on the team already. But, if Ace ends up being a star, it's funny to think back on all these random things that have to happen.
Yeah.
But back to the point, Quinn, random things have to happen to get to 17 wins and 65 losses in general. It's hard to organically only win 17 games. So if you just erase the wacky noise of Trae Young hitting a half-court shot, who was the guard that hit the buzzer beater for the Wizards in the last game of the season?
Bub Carrington.
Bub Carrington, who they drafted. Like
Grayson Allen hitting the one in Utah.
Grayson Allen hitting back-to-back threes in 2.5 seconds when Will Hardy should have just fouled.
Yeah.
And didn't. All these decisions that had to be made for the Jazz to get there, like, you can't expect to replicate that in general.
Yes.
So that should get the Jazz up to 21 wins over where they were last year. I will say, though, that, like, Colin Sexton and John Collins were the Jazz's 3rd and 4th best player last year. Like, Walker or Lowry was still probably the best. But any given night, it was John. I know he only played 40 games. And any given night, it was Colin, was probably your 3rd or 4th best player. Those guys being gone really hurts the Jazz, especially when you consider that you're replacing them with Taylor Hendricks, who's played 40 games in his career. Yep. Or you're replacing them with Walt Clayton, who's never played in his career. Or you're replacing them with Isaiah Collier, who is not a particularly effective player right now. So, you can unleash Will. You can try and win every game. By the way, they're not going to. I know that's been what they're saying. But after the All-Star break, like, if they're at 24 wins at the All-Star break and they're like, we've got the 6th worst record in the NBA. Like, there's a real chance we lose this draft pick. They're not going to put that in danger.
Yeah.
Like, they're smarter than that. They know that. Even Austin Ainge, when asked on DJ and PK last week, like, how are you weighing the pick? He didn't say we're not weighing the pick. He said we're not thinking about that right now. If they have to start thinking about it, they will.
Yeah.
But that was even a little bit of a change from when he was asked, like, are you done with tanking? He said, yeah, we're not tanking anymore. That was a little bit of a departure, just saying, like, we're not thinking about it right now. Why would you give up a top 8 pick?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or a top 9 pick. I guess it would have to be 9 to go to OKC. You're not doing that.
Remind me what happens if it doesn't convey to OKC? Goes away?
Yeah, it's completely expunged.
Okay.
It doesn't turn into 2 second-round picks.
Gotcha. That's what I was
it's
asking.
paid off. The debt is completely paid off. So, yeah, and this is the last year you've done it. And it's haunted you.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why, now in retrospect, 2 years ago, with what we have seen from Cody, which, again, early to give up on Cody, but, like, fine. If Cody had gone to the Oklahoma City Thunder, would you have been like, I can't believe it? Like, it would have been cool that he was playing with his brother.
Yeah.
But, no, I don't think anyone would have cared. Like, not being able to pay that pick off earlier has been a real, rock in the shoe of the Utah Jazz.
Last question, I believe, from Chilipowski. When do they expect Lowry and Kyle to practice? Do you think they'll just sit out the entire preseason?
I don't expect them to sit out the entire preseason. They're not practicing. Again, a little bit just being really careful with Lowry. And, the Jazz don't have that many preseason games. I suspect you'll see them. And it's a wrist. It's not a leg. It's not a knee. It's not a back. Flip is a back.
Yeah.
So you got to probably take that a little bit slowly. And look, that may determine who starts also. If Flip doesn't play all preseason and has a lingering back issue that is bugging him, then you can play George or you can play whoever to sit in that start or play Bryce Sensabaugh at the 2 and kind of adjust your thinking there. I will say, and I've held off talking about this, the Jazz today are holding a scrimmage, and I won't even say the school. They're holding a scrimmage for a high school locally. And by the time you're listening to this, the scrimmage will be over.
Yeah.
So don't start knocking on high school doors.
Go to your nearest high school gym.
Kyle Anderson in there. So we will probably get a little bit better sense of kind of what the teams are doing. Now, I don't expect the Jazz to be out there playing anyone who's injured at a high school gym for some funny high school kids. You know what I mean? But we might get a little better sense of like who's playing and what it looks like. Again, not a lot. And then definitely by Wednesday, Jazz have to start 5 players on Wednesday, and we'll see what it looks like against the Rockets. But hey, man, I'm excited. I'm excited for this season. I'm happy the team has turned the page, to the next thing. And by the way, we've talked a lot about John and Colin. It's like Jordan Clarkson's also a really good player. Jordan Clarkson's going to play a ton for the Knicks this year, and he's really good at what he does. And we will see how he can affect winning in New York, if he's just kind of a placeholder or what role he plays. But you're just losing. Let's see. Jordan's played for well over 10 years. John's got to be right there at 7 or 8 years. Colin's at 6 years. Like, you're talking 25 years of basketball experience combined between those 3 guys. And you're replacing it with guys who haven't played 25 games in their career. Certainly haven't started 25 games in their career. I mean, you're talking about Taylor, who's played 43, or Bryce, who's played, a season and a half in his career. Like, the Jazz are going to be worse. Yeah. The Jazz are going to be a lot worse this year, even if Lowry is like the best he's ever been. Yeah. And Walker makes a big jump. Like, I just don't really see a pathway where they're better than they were last year. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win more games, because they'll be trying harder to win games, but like, they're not going to double their win total. That would be shocking.
And this is something we talked about last year. Like, if the Jazz were healthy, whether the injury reports were completely accurate every week or not, if the Jazz are completely healthy, I see them as like a 35 to 38 win team with the roster they had last year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. If you were to go all out every night and beat up the Chicago Bulls and beat up all the bad teams that you get to play throughout the year and win every game against Charlotte and win every game against the Wizards and whatever, steal a couple games here and there like you do, you would be in a 30-plus win scenario.
Yes.
I just don't even think you have that this year.
Exactly, and I think that this year, and that's why I'm so much more excited for this year for a lot of different reasons, is I think everyone's going to be unleashed. Like, I felt like last year, and I said this last year, it was a forced chapter in the history of Jazz basketball. I think it's going to be whatever happens, happens. And I'm excited to see maybe Lowry have the best year of his career. I'm excited to see what Ace brings. And next week, for the first time after months of scouting reports and media days and summer league, we will have games to talk about again Wednesday in Houston, Friday in San Antonio.
Yep. Should be fun. Thanks to everybody for listening. Find Chandler on Twitter and Blue Sky at Holt Sports. Read me at Ben's Hoops and read us both at KSLSports.com. We'll be back with you next Monday.